The following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
Let's see if Joe Martek is paying attention.
Wait a minute, have we started yet?
About 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, thanks very much. Did you do the disclaimer at the beginning of the show?
That's what was playing.
Oh, okay.
Sorry to bother you.
When we used
I
to
know
have,
you guys were in a deep conversation.
we used to have a good producer in here that gave us warning,
I know.
but
You got the janitor today.
you know what happens when you get the owner's husband in here. And he's still in training. I mean, I've talked to Carol regularly. She says, there may not be any hope for you.
That's true.
That's true, too.
Actually, my doctor just said that.
You're right. Well, it's what's terrible, Dan, is when your doctor looks at you and says, you're way past your shelf life.
Oh, my gosh. Not yet. 75. After
Is that-
75.
Is that the day?
Yeah, from 75, that anything after that's a bonus.
When I thought anything past 14 was a bonus.
Well, that's what you thought. You were planning a short
You're
term.
close to that 75.
Yeah.
Mark,
It's not making me happy. 340-1590, 340-1590. This is a talk show. That means you can call in and talk, and this is the Team Martek Hour, which consists of Ms. Victoria Loyd, Remax of Stewart, who's sitting here at the end, Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, Joe Martek, financial advisor, and Mike Powis, mortgage broker, and Gregory Fasula, attorney, who are not here today.
And when you are watching this telecast,
When I was watching telecast?
the telecast of this show, you will be able to tell the difference between Victoria Loyd and the other folks in
Other
the studio.
members?
Because I'm a blonde.
Yeah, she thinks like a blonde, acts like a blonde,
if
walks
you're-
and talks like a blonde, but she's got dark hair.
If you're a blonde, our cameras are really messed up.
Well, I'll tell you
Oh,
what.
I get so confused sometimes.
What literally happened back, we think in around 04, before Francis and Jean hit, we started doing the radio shows, and the concept was pretty simple. Joe Martek, a financial advisor, has a bunch of clients here and in 13 other states, but clients would ask me questions that I could not answer, didn't have the expertise. And some of the big things that were number 1 and 2 on the list were legal, meaning wills and trusts or other legal circumstances, and insurance. Now, anybody that's lived in Florida since 1992 when Hurricane Andrew hit and put 12 or 14 insurance companies out of business, created a monster havoc in not only homeowners but commercial and other forms of insurance.
Well, Joe, it didn't just affect that. It affected people like Victoria. If you can't get insurance, you can't sell the house.
Absolutely.
It affected people like Mike. If you can't get insurance, you're not going to get a mortgage.
Yeah.
It affected a lot
The
of
ripple
people.
effect was unreal.
It really was bad for the state.
So the concept was, at that time when I wanted to start doing the shows, I needed to have a, quote, independent insurance agent that didn't work for one company. Why? Well, one company might come in one day, which they did, and said, okay, fine, we're non-renewing 25% of our business or 50%, or we're going to double or triple the rates.
Or both.
And what happened is, if you're the agent, it's guilt by association, and the client that used to like you.
I had that conversation yesterday with a client we've had for about 5 or 6 years. He was with a major carrier. That company decided to become a Florida-only company, which a lot of people don't realize that some of your major companies like State Farm, Nationwide, other companies.
Allstate too.
The big ones.
Florida
most all of them.
only, so it doesn't affect the rest of their portfolio. And he was very surprised when he came down from the Northeast wanting to buy car and home. And they said, well, we'll just do your car. We won't do your home. And he ended up with us with both. But I understand there's some problems with that right now.
Did you hear the damage estimates from like St. Augustine and Jacksonville.
They have to be high.
Several
Has to be high.
million dollars.
Yeah.
They were
it's-
underwater.
It's all water damage.
Yeah, they're all
They
underwater.
said they put about 4 feet of water into Flagler College. I mean, it was pretty, and they know that's, when you look at downtown St. Augustine, it sits up pretty high off of the water, but of course they get extreme tides. They get up to 6-foot tides there on occasion, and then I guess
And
with
if
the
you
tides,
get a full moon, you get you get an incoming high tide. You can really have a
That storm really did a number.
bad storm.
And where we play basketball with IRSC up at State College of Florida in Jacksonville, which is off of Butler, and it's right almost on Jacksonville Beach. And then, of course, North Florida University is right across the street. They were underwater. And the gym was underwater.
Well,
So-
define flood again for everybody so they understand what water damage is and flood damage.
Well,
There is a difference.
You have wind-driven rain. Okay, now that's where the wind drives the rain and it finds a way into your structure. Flood is, I say, think of Noah, a rising water, and it rises up and it comes up your driveway, comes up underneath your door. Now that's flood. Plus, flood has some stipulations, such as
Naturally.
you
Yeah.
can't
It's like
you
marriage.
can't be the only one that floods.
yeah.
Well, what
There-
if you
there
are?
I'm just telling you, you have to have at least an acre and at least more than one structure. Read the policy.
But think about this logically, Vic. And
So
you
what
and I
happens then if you
No,
don't?
listen to this.
You don't get covered.
There is no logic.
It's a
Yes, there
federal
is.
program.
You and I know houses that were built, let's say, 30 or 40 years ago on one particular block. And then the houses next to them and behind them and across the street are 3 and 4 and 5 feet higher than that house. Well, guess what? When the water runs off, where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah.
So that person is much more at risk, one, harder to insure, two, and here comes flood.
Well, flood insurance is based on location and the height above sea level.
There you go.
So when we have someone that comes in and says, I'd like to buy flood insurance, first of all, if you're not closing on a house today, it's going to take 30 days to go into effect. So you can't walk into the office when the storm's off the coast and say, I want it. I'll sell it to you, but it won't go into effect for 30 days. Then you should have what's called an elevation certificate, which says this house is in this flood zone, and it's this many feet above or below, sometimes below sea level, and that gives you a price.
Can you buy flood insurance in New Orleans? Because the whole place is underwater.
It's federal. It's a
is
federal
that-
program.
Well, the federal government has what's called a COBRA zone. Okay. Now we have
That
It's a bit
doesn't
like a
sound
rattlesnake.
good.
No, it
It's
is
a
not
rattlesnake zone. In.
Cobra snake. Yeah.
and we have a couple areas on our barrier island that are so low that they are in this COBRA zone. Okay, so yes, there are some issues with with federal government saying, hey, and let's look at logic. If you, and once again we shouldn't, but we should.
You're not talking the nuke plant.
If you're
are you?
if you're dealing with the federal government, and why should you be allowed to continually rebuild your house in an area where the people have to constantly pay to have it brought back?
Yeah.
In some areas after Hugo hit, they came back and said no more rebuilding past the sea oats. And many people said, well, you've just destroyed my property values. That was, it wasn't the house, it was the piece of property. Now I can't rebuild. Well, that's just the way zoning comes and zoning goes. I mean, the federal government has no obligation to continue to pay you to live in a flood-prone area, but they do.
The concept
Wow.
of flood insurance is it's a federal program nationwide, right?
It is, but it's losing so much money that the Fed is pushing to get away from the subsidies. In other words, your premium is pretty low because the government
We
subsidizes
need the
it.
subsidies for the
Well,
health
they've gone up
insurance.
though.
No,
Well, what's
listen,
going
listen.
up is if it's not your
Wait a
primary
minute. Wait a minute.
residence,
Subsidy.
it is going up.
Let's
No,
vote for
mine's
Hillary. We'll get a
primary, and I
subsidy,
get flood
right?
insurance and I don't need it.
Hey,
But it's doubled.
and
in
Greg, don't
price.
worry about it. Your
If
taxes will go down.
If that was not your primary home, it would be even more.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
not
boy.
required. I just
No.
do it because I want to.
But the key, I think, is what I was alluding to. It's a federal program, and Dan, tell me if I'm wrong. And I've had people talk to me and say, "Well, I'm going to go to this agent because my flood insurance costs me so much more, and he'll do a better job." And I said, "I don't think so."
You're right, Jeff. Everything being done the same, it should be the same.
Yeah.
Now, just like we've talked about with realtors, they're not all the same.
Right.
So sometimes people don't know all the little ways to get it down. But if it's all done the same, yes, it's like workers' comp, Joe.
Yeah.
If it's all done the
rate's
same,
already
the
preset.
rate's preset.
340-1590, 340-1590. So the purpose of the group literally was to basically it's to educate people. You know, Vic, when you think about you, Vicky's been Victoria. She hates it when I call her that. But I had every.
She tolerates you, Joe.
I've had every name for her. My favorite. My favorite
every
one for
name
her
is
was
correct.
Stubby, though, because
Stubby.
you are a bit height challenged.
I am not. I've grown an inch.
And that's true. You said that.
I have, and it's true.
that's
And
the
it's not
hair.
from the hair, and it's
not
not from
from
my
the-
shoes.
No, the new shoes
No,
look great.
it's
The new
not the
shoes.
shoes.
Those 7-inch stilettos. I mean, those are hard to come by. Anyway,
I'm going to be measured on your door, and every time I come, I'm going to show you my
somebody
growth.
that's been in real estate since 1978 knows every block in Martin and St. Lucie County, and just because we've known each other about since 1980, there's not a harder working person alive. I mean, if she tells you she's going to do something, by golly, you're going to do it. If she says she's going to call you back, she may be in Great Britain, but she'll call you back at that
That's true.
appointed time, no matter what. She's that kind of person.
She sells castles too. Is that
She
what
sells
they do?
castles. Hey,
Everything
you
in my
want
life's a dream.
That's right. You
You know,
want it, she'll get it.
there's Remax agents all over the world. They're not just
There are.
in the United States. So
Correct.
she can go over to England and get a referral commission.
And the thing is, you have to clone yourself. They say, I want somebody like you. Well, that's kind of hard when you don't know, but you always know they're a top producer. We try to get the best agents.
340-1590. 340-1590. Class, you're supposed to be writing that phone number down and keeping it next to the phone, so in case you have a question, you can call. Now, if by chance you don't want to talk on the radio, you can call the show, the radio station, at any time. They'll take your name and number and have us call you back. 340-1590. So concept again, Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, big deal, and it has continued to be a big deal. The captive companies, there's nothing wrong with many of these companies, but very often the client is the one that suffers, and the agent doesn't have a responsibility to go tell his client, hey, by the way, this company is going to non-renew you, or they're going to double or triple your rates. He has a problem being a captive agent, and I was raised as a captive agent.
Well, Joe,
Yeah.
I was too, but here's one of the bigger problems with the captive agent philosophy. In many of these cases, the company says, if we don't sell it or no longer want it, A, you can't go outside of our company guidelines. You can't be licensed with another company.
Right.
Or B, you can only go through a broker, which means it's going to be a little bit more expensive.
Yep.
So to me, it's been much more advantageous to be directly licensed with these companies and work as a direct representative of them.
Well, and let me go back a few bit, because back when I was a farmer's agent up in Michigan, they allowed me to get licensed with other companies if they didn't write it. But as soon as these other companies, especially the highly rated ones, the best companies, found out I was a farmer's agent, they said, nope, we don't want you, because
That's the way it works. I mean, here's one of the things that's helpful to me. Let's suppose you're a brand new company, no loss experience. A lot of these major companies say, well, we just don't want you.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any verifiable proof that you're going to be a good customer.
Right.
So I can put you with a smaller company. I can wait 3 years, and then I can move you to a really higher rated company because I have licenses and contracts with both.
Right.
So there's a lot of ways we can serve the customer. If I only worked for a company that said we only want clients that at least pay us $5,000 a year, and I've had 3 years of experience,
right.
I'd be out of business for a lot of people because they don't have that.
Yep.
They're small little mom and pops. Or in Florida, it's full of brand new startups. People move down here with the vision to start their own little business. They don't have any loss experience. So a lot of the companies say, I'd love to help you, but I can't. In my case,
We can get them into broadcasting if they want.
That's
losses.
no problem.
Have plenty of losses.
And you don't need experience, right?
Wing and a prayer.
Ring and a prayer. Speaking of Greg Fasulin, that was that was probably one of the harder things when I first started trying to put our group. By the way, our group, we don't own each other, we don't work for each other, we don't share office space, we don't share commissions, fees, nothing. When I started putting the show together, or trying to, I wanted what I consider the best people in their field, and the best people in each one of these different categories usually work on their own. They don't work for somebody else. when you're one of the better ones, at some point you go start your own shop. I mean, that's just the way life works. So Greg Fasula, attorney, one of the first things I do when I meet a new suspect or prospect is talk about a will and or a trust. And when I first started in the business 20-some years ago, I would find an attorney that was relatively close geographically to my client. And then I'd go interview the attorney, and then I'd take the client in there, and then I'd get sick to my stomach because the attorney was real nice to me when I was interviewing him, but as soon as I got the client in, he smelled blood, and all of a sudden, he became the arrogant, pretentious, not user-friendly. I'm not saying all attorneys, but when I bumped into Greg, and I don't know how it happened, and he doesn't either, but it's over 20 years ago, Greg was a gentleman. He was a good listener. He was patient. He wasn't pretentious or arrogant.
But Joe, none of that would matter to me if he wasn't competent. I don't care how nice he was. If he wasn't good at what he did, I wouldn't want to use him. In your estimation, you got the best of both here, Joe. You've got someone who does have those great qualities, but more importantly to me, he has the expertise and he's able to do what I want him to do.
Well, there's the other thing about Greg. Greg is, we all kind of pick on attorneys from time to time where a client walks in the door and says, okay, Mr. Attorney, I need to get this done. The attorney says, no problem, give me a deposit. Then the attorney has to go learn it. Most attorneys are experts in certain fields. Dan and I talk about this internally. When it comes to investments, there's like 30,000 different investments out there. No such thing as any one broker knowing all of them. When it comes to Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, he may have 100 companies under his umbrella, but there's certain types that
they don't all do the same things.
No. But there are certain types, like giant yachts or jet
Well,
airplanes.
I've told you before, I do all different types of insurance,
right?
But I will not do big boats because I believe it's beyond my level of expertise to help the customer.
Right.
And I do no planes. So I don't do big yachts, and I don't do big planes, or any planes, because I don't know enough about it, and I'm not willing to take the time to learn.
What's big?
That's cool.
Big, a boat, anything over 36 feet.
It's big.
It's big for my company. You need to go to a marine expert.
Yeah. And there are literally, that's all they do is write big boats, some of these big companies. 340-1590, 340-1590. By the way,
and I have some clients that have big yachts.
We have these.
We do everything else. I said, no, I'm going to send you over here for the boat. And that's,
well, that one doesn't work. Let's try this one. That one doesn't work.
We need headphones?
Yep.
Here, give this to Victoria first.
Well, I don't hear anything, Greg. But
I hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm so happy. But I don't hear. I tell you what, Victoria, you're going to take this caller. When this caller, right? We have one on the radio?
Paul is on the line.
Victoria, tell him he's on the radio.
Paul, this is Victoria on the radio.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Great show as usual.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
This was for pretty much Dan Woron in relation to insurance.
Well, Paul, if I can help you, I will.
The other night I was going through a box of papers. I'm from up north. And put something away in a closet, and I pulled it out, and I'm going through it. There's a lot of insurance papers in there. So at the time, I was a snowbird going back and forth. I had a mobile home up there and one down here in Spanish Lakes. I ran across an insurance bill, $158 for the year up north.
I love it.
Full coverage, and you could space it out over 12 months at $26 a month.
And guess what? You're not up north anymore.
I know it. And at the same time, the one down here was about 10 times the
I was going to
cost.
say about $1,500 to $2,000.
Yep. But it was amazing. I said, I got to take that and frame it or put it up somewhere. I couldn't believe it. $158.
Hey, but when you live in Massachusetts, they get you big time on taxes and everything else.
Yeah. They make up for it. Don't worry.
Well, I've had some clients over the years who've moved down just for the winter. They'll buy a unit for over there in Spanish Lakes, and then as soon as the season's over, they sell it.
Yeah.
And they say it's cheaper than paying rent.
Spanish Lake's a magnificent community. The guys that
I was
built
lucky. This was the old Spanish Lake, the original one.
Spanish Lake's
and,
one.
I guess the father was really good with the people there, and he would go on trips with everybody.
Oh, yeah. Good reputation.
And I had a woman down there. She was an original owner. She's still paying $75 a month.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, you know, the Wynn family.
For her to pass away.
The Wynn family did a marvelous, community over there. And from what I'm seeing now in some of the Spanish Lakes communities, they're actually building CBS houses.
Yeah,
A lot of them. A lot
Quite a
of them
few.
going in. Quite a few.
Quite a few.
But it was just funny that you had mentioned insurance, and I said, I got to call them and tell them about this one. What are the odds of having? That was from like 05, 07 in that area.
And
Wow.
in just a 10-year period of time, how much has all changed.
Big deal.
You know, it's funny. I was going through some of my dad's old boxes I still have. I found an old tax return of his. He made $4,800 that year.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm telling
And they
you,
lived on it.
he lived on it. It's so you don't realize how things slowly change over decades. All of a sudden, you realize your money is not worth what it used to be.
You got a pocket full, but it's not worth anything.
There you go.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he was complaining about the price of gas. And I said, I remember when gas was a quarter.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, yeah, I'll tell you what. If you get me a solid silver quarter, I'll buy you a gallon of gas.
Hey, Paul, thanks so much for calling in. We're glad
Thanks,
you
Paul.
called.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
You know, it's funny. He brings up a point. My father signed a deed right after he got out of the service in San Diego, and we had this little tiny bungalow, if you will, on Law Street in San Diego, and it's very tiny. It couldn't have been 1,200 square feet. And
That's pretty big.
Yeah. And he bought it for, I think it was like $5,000.
There you go. Yeah.
It just sold for $1.8 million.
Wow.
I will tell
$1.8
you.
million
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
postage
Guess what?
stamp.
You're just lucky that it wasn't in Detroit.
It'd still be worth $5,000.
This will be worth $5,000. Hey, I wanted to. We've talked about the group and what the group tries to do, and we do try to educate people, and that's what the whole concept is. And even though we have fun with it, because things do change, there's reasons for things changing, and not always good reasons, but that's just the way life is. It's not always fair. My kids, that was one of the things, I bet you 1,000 times, you're not fair. I say, right, what else?
Yeah, next
And
question.
you haven't stopped, right?
So much for that.
That hasn't stopped.
But I had an article.
Learned that in Catholic school, by the way.
Boy, didn't we, though? That was, I've often
You should
said,
sue them for that. It's damaged you.
That's right. Traumatized
The only
me for life.
reason, the only
Jesuits.
reason we were Catholic is so we had holy days that I could work on that milk truck, and I didn't have to go to school. If my dad could have figured out how to be Catholic and Jewish, he would have done it. So I'd have more days off school to work on that truck.
Well, if you'd have picked up Muslim, I mean, you would have
I
had
could
all
have
the
picked all
whole
three.
gamut.
Yeah,
Hey,
you'd
man.
have had, that's the hat trick.
I'm
baby.
glad he died now because it's not nice to say that, but the bottom line is now that you told him that, he would have said if he could figure a way to do it.
Yeah, and you're too old to take off
Too
school.
old now to take off school, right? What different?
And you couldn't carry the milk up the stairs anyway.
Hey,
Joe.
forget it. It's all over but the shouting. Hey, speaking of the media and our illustrious presidential election, I don't know if anybody has noticed, but on occasion it appears as though the media is a bit liberal. Would you think there's a chance of that, Dan?
Never.
I've noticed that
On occasion?
on occasion.
On occasion.
A rare occasion, but on occasion.
Not a chance.
Not
Fair-
here.
Fair
Not
and
here.
balanced.
Definitely not in St. Lucie County or, in fact, any place in Florida. It's all very unbiased. Correct, Greg?
Oh, certainly.
Oh, certainly. Right. Anyway, I picked up the Stewart News last Sunday, and I couldn't believe what I read. And this columnist happens to be a relatively newcomer to Florida. He's from up north someplace, but that doesn't make him usually a conservative or a liberal. Normally, if you're in a columnist in a newspaper
He could be a
business,
moderate like Greg.
oh boy, yes. Greg says he's a moderate, but ask Greg's son. Okay, anyway, so the columnist wrote, "Elections are never rigged unless they are." That was the headline. Then he came up and he said, there's talk about this with Donald Trump with rigged elections. And he said, I sat through a documentary on President Lyndon B. Johnson, which addressed his first election to the U.S. Senate in 1948. Johnson won by the skin of his teeth after 202 voters, some of them reportedly dead, lined up in alphabetical order to cast their ballots just before the polls closed. This is just a coincidence. Then the article goes on to talk about our county commission in Martin County. He says, more recently, there was a priceless line from CBS Miami just last week. History has shown us that most voter fraud in South Florida does not take place on Election Day. It usually happens when absentee ballots are falsified. Now, can you imagine such a thing happening?
Oh, please.
I remember a few years ago, and Vic, you might remember this, the Republican Party, which I happen to have been registered as, in the kindness of their heart, took home 5,000 absentee ballots just to make sure they were marked correctly. Now, you would never think. I mean, it was out of the kindness of their heart, right?
But that's just helping out.
But then the most recent one was a young man named Chase Lergio, who was a student at Jensen Beach High School, who joined the District 1 Martin County Commissioner's race as a write-in candidate. And that particular thing, Florida law stipulates that even one write-in in the general election is close enough to a primary, and that eliminated everybody that voted that was not a Republican. They had to be if they were a Democrat or an independent, their votes were wasted. And you might think that that was by pure accident. You might think that. So they actually They actually went through in the article to find out that Ron Rose, head of the Chamber of Commerce,
Jensen Beach Chamber,
good guy, he helped a kid fill out his paperwork, but the kid did sign it himself. He says, but you might think that was an isolated incident.
But it's not, Joe. It happens all the time.
That was what happened. Here's it. According to the Miami Herald, dubious write-ins were blocking full voter participation in 6 Senate districts and 14 House districts on the August 30 primary ballot, disenfranchising 1.6 million voters.
But see, I don't like some of that verbiage.
Okay? I know you don't like it.
I don't like it because that's Florida statute that makes that the law. And what you have is seasoned political people who understand the nuances of the law, and they say, hey, if we do this, then this can't happen. The law should be changed so it can't happen. And that's but as long as it's the law, then don't complain.
Well, that's exactly what the article says, that who are you going to get to change the law? Every incumbent likes the law. I mean,
people should rise up and demand the law.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Absolutely.
There we go. So here comes where the Don is causing a rise up, and like the owner's husband is in here talking about the difference in the rallies between Trump and how many people showed up.
Oh, you should have seen the helicopter video from Channel 9 that actually I think we have up on
That was
our
over
page.
in Sanford, Florida?
Yeah.
It was enormous.
Oh, it was mammoth. I'm looking. It's like this piece of video does not end, and the people don't either.
And that I-4 corridor, why people don't realize it, that is the major corridor in Florida for voting.
And the political parties.
Of course.
That's the only thing they care about.
Seriously.
The I-4, because they know where South Florida is going.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They know where North Florida is going.
Yeah.
It's the
I-4
They have no
corridor.
clue where I-4 is going. Yeah.
Right.
It was just an interesting thing. And they didn't know how many thousands of people showed up, but it was quite
around 20.
And how many showed up for Hillary's last
They were in the
event?
dozens.
It was a small crowd. I think they had it was about 1,800 for her, but the vice president only had, I think Veronica
20 or 30?
It was 93 people.
And half of those.
It got up that high?
Yeah,
And the media actually counted them.
but half
Pretty
the
easy
people,
when you have under
half
100.
the people were in the media.
They may have counted them
That's
too.
true.
Yeah.
But what's going on where they're saying that they're putting their ballots in and they're voting Republican, but it's coming up Democrat?
No.
What's going on with that?
When we have, and this is what Dan was alluding to, in our system in Florida, let's say in Martin County, it's a dominant Republican county. Well, if only Republicans run, the Democrats can't vote. But if there's only one person unopposed, then they can have write-ins from anybody. Well, this kid Lergio came in at the last minute as a write-in candidate, so he knocked out the Democrats and the Independents' ability to vote in that county commission.
Well, here's what I would
Yeah, but that's
prefer.
not what I heard. I heard it was coming up on the machine
Yes,
showing
I've
it
seen
wrong.
that too. I've
Yeah.
seen that
I think
too.
that's in a couple states. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
it was
seen
in Georgia and it was here.
Remember we had hanging chads?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and Oregon left Trump's name off the ballot.
It's only right.
It's like, well, but hey, you know,
that helps. It helps it turn
There's
out.
so much marijuana out there that
It's Oregon, right?
It's Oregon.
Blame it on the marijuana.
It's Oregon, baby.
All I'm trying to say is when the Don comes up and says rigged elections, there's different ways to understand that comment. But
Well, Joe, you know what I told you earlier? I thought at the minute he said that, my wife goes, well, how did that happen? How can they do that? I go, well, I thought what he was saying was where they're trying to rig the election primarily is through constant barrage of negative media exposure over and over and over again everywhere you turn. That's how you sway the public. I didn't think he meant as much illegal stuff because we've always had that.
Oh, yeah,
We've always
yeah,
been aware
yeah.
of that.
The key is this. I don't know that most voters or even some of the voters realize how much, the old joke was, vote Democrat and vote off.
Now, vote early and vote often.
Vote early and vote often.
In Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, Chicago, boy, oh boy, let's face it, there was the heartbeat.
Remember the late Tom Teeter at WSTU? Tommy used to talk about his father was a precinct worker for the Democratic Party in was it LaGrange, Indiana, and he would have ballot boxes in the back of his trunk,
Ready to go.
and what he would do is he would get phone calls. Obviously no cell phones back in those days, so he'd have to stop at a gas station or something like that, get a phone call. Do you want the ballots in now, or do we need them?
Yeah.
You laugh.
So
but
have
it's
some
true.
extra
I
ballots.
talked to his daddy about it. Oh yeah.
Now, do you think they would? Now, here's a question. Do you think there would be less ability for voter fraud if we use the technology we have versus the antiquated systems we have?
Boy, that's a pretty easy one, isn't it? Well,
That's gonna be a real
doesn't the
question.
state of Florida require a picture ID?
I've
Yes.
always been asked for one.
Yes,
Yeah, I've always been
I've always been asked
So how
for one.
about a thumbprint like my bank requires
That's
sometimes?
it. Now, a picture ID, you could have a phony picture ID. That'd be pretty easy, right?
My son had several when he was in high school.
Yeah, right.
Depending on his age, right?
Well, you just said it. What happens is that was, hey, who's buying the beer this weekend? Oh, Fred's got the ID. Let him go buy it.
My
Okay.
son had an ID, and you know how Brett doesn't look at all like an Indian,
Right.
but he was from some Oklahoma Indian tribe, and that got him in the door.
It did.
Oh yeah, he
Well,
got on the internet.
they didn't look too. Let me just tell you, everybody in our neighborhood, we had one little convenience store that you could buy beer from, but you had to at least look like you shaved.
Yes, we all had that place.
We all had that guy in the neighborhood. But you know what happens? I'm trying to say, yes, there's been fraud in all kinds of different things, but what Dan you said, it could be eliminated.
It could be eliminated.
But
it
then
could
all
be a
of us-
retina scan. It could be a lot. We have the technology to eliminate it all, but we choose not to.
You know what happens is now, if you send somebody down to get a fingerprint done, well, we might arrest a whole bunch of them, and our jails would be
You're
overflowing.
wanted. That would be a smart way. Tie it into the
Voting.
to voting, and we could nab you right there on the spot.
I'm afraid they'll cut my thumb off. They might need it or something.
You voted too many times.
That's it. 340-1590, 340-1590. Yeah, we obviously we're getting close, and I ran the polls this morning, and the Don is neck and neck with Hillary in Ohio, Texas, and Florida. And in fact, they're putting him ahead in 2 out of the 3 states.
And actually, there is one poll that has him up, I think, by 4, Investors Business Daily, and apparently they have picked the last,
Yes, they
4 or
have.
5
To a T.
presidential elections.
They've gone.
They have.
Yeah, to a T.
Not that we would think some of these pollsters are slanted.
Oh, never.
If I told you something long enough, lied to you long enough, you might believe that lie.
I
Well,
doubt it.
Well, you probably wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't.
Like the check's in the mail.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
this,
matter of fact, where is that check?
and this
right,
time I
check's in
signed
the
it. 340-1590, 340-1590. So, group, attorney Greg Fasula. I started to talk about Greg for a minute, back about when a client walks into an attorney's office and says, hey, I need you to do such a thing, and the attorney says, sure, give me a check, and we start off the process. Well, whether he knows that expertise or not, oftentimes what I'm going to call attorneys do that, and then they learn at the expense of that client, and they're going to charge them by the hour to go and learn. Greg won't do that. You walk into Greg's office and say, hey, what about this or what about that? Greg says, I don't do that. but I do know somebody in the neighborhood or in the area that I trust, that I feel is credible, and this is who I'd recommend it. And then on different occasions, Greg says, I don't know anybody that I could recommend for that. So how are you going to find out? Well, you can go through the state bar, you can talk to neighbors, friends, or you can just get in the phone book.
I have a neighbor who knows everything.
Hey, we all have those. I got a couple ex-wives that know
And
everything.
bartenders.
And bartenders, right?
They think
and
they know
hairdressers.
everything.
Hairdressers really know
Oh,
everything.
amazing.
That's it. So the concept with Greg, no matter what happens when a client of mine has a problem, I always call Greg and say, hey, they're doing this, and he says, Joe, I don't do that, but here's somebody that I know that I have good confidence in that does it.
Isn't that really what most people do in their own little circle of influence? If they don't know, they'll make sure that they give it to the right person. Now, I take it one step further. I always call the client.
And then call back.
And I say, hey, how did that go? Because I want to know. I want to know how it went.
Well, I usually ask my client when I refer to him, I says, hey, after you've talked to him, if you have any problems, call me back. Just from that standpoint. You want, we none of us want guilt by association. You want to say, hey, if I recommend Dan or Victoria or Greg or anybody, we want that to be a good experience because all of us have been around a long, long time, and we don't want to send a client or a prospect or a suspect, a neighbor or a friend to somebody that is going to haunt them. I mean, some years ago, this one haunts me to this day. A fellow boater looks at me and says, hey, Joe, do you know anybody who does canvas work? And I just had my canvas work done on a boat, and I said, yeah. I met this kid, and his price was phenomenal. And I said, here's his name and number. He said, well, your job turned out pretty good. And I said, yeah, I'm happy with it. Well, what the canvas people normally do is take a deposit, usually about half the job, because they have to
buy material.
They got to buy the material, which is not abnormal in anything, right?
Yep.
I don't care what you do. Well, that was the end of her canvas and the money.
Yeah.
The kid split. Now, when I say kid, he was a young man.
Florida's notorious for that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Notorious.
Now, you're hoping this young man would start in business, and you're going to help him, and he's going to do a good job, and he's going to pick up referral business. But obviously, things got in the way, and probably the kid had good intentions, but he hid.
But, Joe, that leads to a nice point. When we decided to put this together, we made sure the people we associated with were not new kids.
Exactly.
Been here for a long time, good reputations, not going to fold their tent in the middle of the night and leave.
Well, what Dan is saying is this, and that was the thing when we started doing it. We wanted nobody new in business. We wanted people that were all well-seasoned. I mean, Ms. Victoria Loyd, even though she's only 30, has been in real estate since 1978, which is a miracle. But, hey,
it happens.
It happens. And Dan, you're like 37 years now?
More than half my life, Joe. I've been doing this. And, and I don't say this in a bad way, but I never grew up dreaming of being an insurance agent.
No.
It just, how life just takes you here and life takes you there. And, I went from being a lobbyist for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce into this. And I feel very blessed to do what I do, but it wasn't something I always thought I was going to do.
I wanted 12 children, and look, I had none.
Yeah. So,
and I gave birth to towns.
No, you've got children. They're just all part of this group.
It is.
That's it.
Yeah, and all the people I've ever sold to, they're my family.
Yeah.
But, it is what happens. Is very often life takes us. What is this? Plans don't always go according to plan. It's just that simple. But concept was this. We all know in Florida especially, people come and go rapidly. Florida seems to attract people from all over the world.
It's a transient state.
Well, they come
that's
to
why
get
they
away from
say.
the cold, and they leave in the spring.
Yeah.
Why is there so many houses for sale, they'll say, on one block? I said, because it's not like up north. We kept our houses for all our lives.
Yeah.
But that's what people are coming and going all the time, and that's where your turnover comes from.
Well, and also, we have old people here that die. Can you believe
You
that?
do.
I mean,
do.
Notice he's looking at me when
we got 2 or 3 sitting right here are past our shelf life, So
Not yet. Not yet.
according to Victoria, she keeps moving the shelf life up.
That's right.
I put you on a different level.
I think I'm a hostess Twinkie myself. Nobody knows when it's going to end.
No expiration date.
No expiration date.
Well, they don't ever. I don't think they ever go stale.
I don't think they do.
No.
They haven't found one
I'm not
yet
sure
that's
what's
gone
in
bad.
them, but they don't go bad.
It's a lot of chemicals. But when you glow at night, you've eaten too many Twinkies.
I wonder if we could build a house out of it and see if
You
it
probably,
really stands.
yeah, but you got to let them rot a little bit so they get hard. So
Well, But that's what they'll do. We'll stack them and let them get
Plaster
hard.
over them.
Yeah, that'd be
340-1590, 340-1590. So again, everybody has been around in this business for a long, long time, and we all feel very, very comfortable and blessed that we've been able to help a lot of people.
And we have helped a lot of people. We really have.
So I'm looking for some input here.
Input on
Well, we can talk politics. We can talk
politics is always good. I mean, we're almost to the end of this cycle. What are we, like 10, 12 days away? So, I mean, if I'm going to encourage people, the number one people I would encourage are the millennials.
Yeah, boy.
Okay, these are the people who are going to be paying this debt that we are running up. Okay, it won't really be people like you and I,
No,
Joe.
we'll
We
be
won't live
dead.
long enough
No.
to pay it off. But my children and grandchildren are going to be paying this debt till they're my age. So,
$20 trillion.
and counting.
And counting.
And
Who
Going
keeps
up,
making the
going up.
money?
Well,
They
it's
just keep
not us.
printing it?
They keep borrowing it.
Oh,
That's
the
sad
Chinese.
thing.
Yeah.
They
I
borrow
mean,
it.
When you
They're a
well,
primary
but
debtor.
Yeah, but even then they
What's our exchange?
the key is this. In America has the ability to not have to account because we are the number one nation in the whole world. But that house of cards can't last forever.
And there are many companies and countries rather who would like to see the currency no longer be the dollar.
Yeah.
Okay, the dollar is the currency that's mostly used in
Yeah,
business.
exactly.
They'd like to see that change. So if you're a millennial or if you have one in your family, if you're a parent or grandparent, you need to encourage that child or grandchild to vote. And I would tell them, listen, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but if you're happy with the way things are, you might know who you're going to vote for. And if you're not happy with how things are and you think that your future might be better off, you might want to put somebody else in.
Absolutely.
So I've got to do my million, billion, trillion story again for those that haven't heard. And Greg, you're old, so you keep forgetting it. So I can tell you again, it's
That's
always
right.
it's all going to be brand new.
I enjoy it every time I
It's
hear
a
it.
him. You know, most
the
of us
first time.
don't pay too much attention to people or things that say million, billion, trillion because our checkbooks are missing a few of those zeros. This is perspective. It's trivia, but it's perspective, and that is this: 1,000,000 seconds, tick, 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 is 12 days. That means if you stood in front of a fire and threw in a dollar bill every second, it would take you 12 days to burn $1 million. Now, you think that's a lot? 1 billion seconds is 32 years. Take you a little longer to burn
Half your life.
1 billion, 32 years, half your
Well,
life.
you
But-
keep track of that life thing.
but wait a
don't you?
minute.
Yes, I
But wait a
do.
minute, because we have a $20 trillion deficit. 1 trillion seconds is 32,000 years. 32
Times 20.
times 20. You know, nobody's calculator goes that big. There's no such thing. I mean, I don't care how many zeros.
Oh, I bet Watson could figure it out.
Yeah. All I'm trying to say is, and what Dan was alluding to, we have a major, major, major problem in this country that appears to be totally, you know, and even both of our candidates are all for spending more money on infrastructure. The Donald is assuming that if he can lower capital gains rates and the corporate tax rate, that will bring more dollars back into America and bring more jobs, which generates more business, more money coming into the tax coffers.
Well, we'd like to see something for our money. If I'm going to spend $1 gazillion, which we're spending, you know, I'd like to have a new road. I'd like to have a new bridge.
Yeah.
I'd like to have good, clean water. I don't want it to go to corrupt politicians going into their businesses. I wanted it to be used for the people, for the public. That's where the money should be spent.
You
guys
mean the
have too
bridge
much
to nowhere?
comment. Yeah, I was going to ask him where you wanted that bridge
One
to
in
go.
Alaska.
Well, look at ours. We have the crosstown to nowhere.
At least we
Well, it's
have a
not-
bridge.
Well, but
Okay?
the bridge is going to be built, and yeah, it'll be fine.
You think
once
it'll
it's
happen
done.
before
But
we
we've
die?
spent money.
Yeah.
We've spent
No,
money and
well.
have nothing to show for it but debt, and that's what Trump has said.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
spent this money and we have nothing to show for it but the debt,
Right.
and that's what's wrong.
Our
And what he came up with the other day, I thought was very interesting. Term limits.
Yeah.
We've
yeah.
all talked about
We've
it.
talked
and we've
about it.
all been in favor of it.
Yep.
What happens is
Absolutely.
this: if the boy gets in, we are counting on a shakeup. If he doesn't get in, we are
And
counting
if she gets in, we're counting on to shake down.
as business as usual. Business as usual.
It's amazing.
Look at what happened with Obamacare. Greg, are you old enough for Medicare yet?
Oh yes, I am.
It's on the horizon.
That's called lucky.
Very lucky.
But
As
look
a
at
matter
poor
of fact.
Dan. He's going to be paying $3,000 a month next year for health
Yeah,
insurance.
I will be.
because Obamacare has absolutely fallen apart. And what it does, those people that are not subsidized by the government are carrying, and these insurance companies are totally unhappy with the whole system. And then you've only got a $6,000 deductible on top of it. The system is pathetic.
I pay out in health insurance and deductibles more than the average family wage in St. Lucie County.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how high it is. And that one family said they had to
Wow.
cancel because she couldn't afford it anymore for her and her family.
And it is many, many, many that don't fit. They can't afford it. They might be over the limit where they qualify for subsidies. I have met 2 people in my life that won on Obamacare, that were paying $25 and $30 a month, but they were below the poverty level. I mean, they were stealing to eat. I mean, it was just,
That's sad.
that was the only people that worked. And that means people like Dan or whether those that are not on Medicare, they're paying through the nose for.
Well, you remember what we talked about of having something to show for our debt?
Yeah.
Remember they were trying to put health insurance for 20 million people.
Yeah.
That was the goal. It would have been cheaper to give them all $1 million
Yep.
and say, hey, you're on your own, self-insure.
Well, and as you guys have said on this show for 5 years, you've got Medicare as an example of what they could have
I
done.
personally want it for everybody.
Yeah.
Why reinvent it?
I want it for everybody. It works. And guess what happens? They say, insurance companies will be mad. Well, guess what happens? Insurance companies have supplements. They have HMOs. They have PPOs. A whole different industry. And I will tell you, these things work. Now, is everybody happy with everything? No such thing as everybody being happy. That's impossible.
But you know what we want, Joe, as a people? As a people, we want value for our
Value.
dollar.
Value.
I don't mind spending money if I perceive a value for it, okay? But we pay the most for our schools.
Yep.
We pay the most for our health care. We pay the most for our prescriptions than the whole world.
Yep.
I don't perceive that value. I perceive it's my country. The politicians hanging us out to dry saying, yeah, just keep paying. You can afford it.
That's why we are a bit on the bandwagon of change.
Yeah, we need change.
Just a little bit.
Is
on
it the train we're on, Joe?
Yep, this is the train we're on. 340-1590, 340-1590.
I want to
Victoria,
take 1 second
talk
and
to
say
me
hi to a
about
friend that's in the hospital. And I told her she was going to try to see us
Tell her say hi.
online. Hi, Essie. I hope you're feeling better.
Are we
She broke
streaming?
her
Are we
femur.
streaming live today?
Oh, that's
Yes.
no fun. That's painful.
It is painful.
Does she have TV? Does
She had her
a
little
computer?
computer, so she was going to try to go on. So I told her I'd say
Because my
hi.
Uncle John, he should be happy because you're on today.
Yeah, Uncle John.
John,
Hi.
he likes it.
Hi, Essie.
He says, Joe, I'm so sick and tired of looking at you and Dan. You're ugly.
That's right.
We need Victoria on there to class the joint up a bit.
I'm all for that.
Too funny.
He's up in Michigan. He sounds like Michigan. I looked for Michigan polls. They don't have any.
Yeah.
They've all been
they had Joe
melted
Dombrowski
down and sold for scrap iron. Joe.
Exactly.
Yeah, and when we were talking, you were going to talk about real estate. Interesting. I talk to so many people. They think that when they call a realtor, they have to pay them a fee to buy something.
Can you imagine people still think that?
They really do.
Yeah.
But the interesting part about it is that some companies are charging a processing fee to people as a buyer, and I'd never use those agents up to $1,200. Some
That's
people
sort of
charge.
like a car dealer
Yes.
charging you a dealer's
kind of
fee.
dealer
Yeah,
back.
we really need to start talking about this because it's horrible, and we're at a fixed cost. We never have any junk fees at all with ours.
Isn't that something? And guess we got somebody here
Bulldog.
that we've never talked to before. Mr. Bulldog. Mr. Bice, how are you, sir? You're on the radio.
Hey, guys, how are you? My compliments to Stubby, which I'd never call her because I have more respect for that lady than you would believe.
Yeah, that's how Joe is.
Yeah, there
Thanks,
you go.
Bulldog.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just had to get that one in. Hey, I've got a question for Dan.
Yes, sir.
Joe, keep your ears open. This is concerning driving, and you could use all the help you can get in insurance rates. So, Dan, I wanted to ask you, with the advent, I'm thinking in a couple of years, of self-driving cars, how are you going to, let's say I want to buy a self-driving car, how do you insure me for that, and what happens if I get in an accident?
I would love to tell you that I have the answer, but I honestly don't, Bulldog. I really don't know what's going to happen to the industry as we move forward because we don't have the statistical data yet to make good decisions. I would imagine that nothing will happen immediately, until they can do that. I'm not sure. Let's suppose you bought a driverless car. Is the manufacturer responsible if it malfunctions and you have a wreck? Do you have the ability to override it as the driver sitting behind the wheel? I don't know. I know it's going to be a very interesting concept, and I would be concerned about this other thing also, Bulldog. The number one job for men in America is driving vehicles. What if all these trucks and taxis and cars go driverless? What are these men and women going to do?
Well, it's kind of interesting, is because I heard or I read about the first, believe it or not, Budweiser delivery.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
100 and some miles on the interstate.
The guy was not behind the wheel. He was in the sleeper cab.
Yeah.
So, do I want to get out there with all these self-driving vehicles? And I'm just like going, how in the heck is that insurance going to work?
Not too bad if you get hit with a beer truck.
I'm just going to say, if the beer truck rolled over and spilled all the beer, there'd be one hell of a party for a while.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be here if the beer truck hit you. You'd be dead.
Yeah. No, but you're right. But it's going to be an interesting thing.
But, as my industry gives me more data, I'll keep my ears and my eyes open and report back to you from time to time, because I just don't know. I really don't know yet.
Yeah, I think lawyers are going to have heydays with this.
That's just right. Attorneys they get paid first. You know that.
Yep, of course. And hey, Greg, you were going to call me. Give me a call when you get a chance, man.
Bulldog, thanks for calling in, my man.
Thanks,
all right,
Bulldog. Good talking to you. Bye-bye.
340-1590. Let me talk 2 minutes about money. And just real quick. Those that are not getting 5 and 6% in the bank, which should be 99.99999% of you. There's debt instruments that are paying 5 and 6%, and I've been leaning on these things heavily for the last couple of years because my prediction has been pretty true, and it's still true, and that is that the market is flat and that the market is going to go no place for a period of time until we can start our country earning money again. We're not in a good position I don't care who you talk to. Even though they say unemployment is very low, it's just hard to fathom that businesses are not doing extremely well. And if businesses are not doing well, the value of their stock does not go up. And then if the value of their stock doesn't go up, people don't make money in the market. So debt instruments.
It's a vicious circle.
It's a vicious circle, but debt instruments are paying 5 and 6% to some of the biggest companies in America. This is not common stock. Anybody that wants to get information on things like that, you call 340-1590. I love giving people information on them, see if it's something that fits for you. 340-1590. So, words of wisdom, Dan?
Joe, I'm going to call the Florida Insurance Agents Association when I get back to my office and see what they can tell me about electric cars and driverless cars. Because I want to know to be able to answer
It's got to happen,
It will
It's got to happen. Are we almost out of time?
About 30 seconds.
30 Victoria,
seconds.
30 seconds is
Well,
yours.
in 30 seconds, we're going to tell people that it's still a good time to buy property. So
Interest
look us
rates are
up.
still
Interest
3s and
rates are-
4s.
It's free money. They give you free
yeah,
money.
Yeah. All you have to do is actually prove you can pay. You believe that?
That's right.
But I was talking yesterday, somebody was on CNBC saying 5.8 credit score will get them into a VA or FHA mortgage. 5.8.
That's fantastic.
Until
perfect.
next week, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Bye.
Anyway.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.